Shalom and welcome to 2 Minutes of Torah. This is the 6th shiur on the concept of Rov. We've discussed that Rov is technically according to Ovadya Yosaif and other Shitot only when you have everyone arguing, discussing the point back and forth, like in a Beis Din, and only then when the majority heard the other opinions and the minority, everyone heard each other out, and the majority comes to a conclusion, then we follow that conclusion because they heard the argument, they heard the defenses of the other side, and still the majority came to this conclusion. I'd like to just apply this concept to Midinat Yisrael. Some people say that, listen, Rov Gedolim do not have a positive approach to the Midinat Yisrael. They're not saying Hallel Yom Ha'atzmaut, and not going ahead and singing and dancing. And even if you want to avoid the technical halachic question of Hallel, that's a halachic shot, just a whole general feeling towards the state. Don't say how a positive orientation, what a bracha this is, whether it's gula, not gula, but a positive orientation. The majority of Gedolim, you don't seem to get the sense that that's what they're holding. So people say that anyone who's not holding that way, who's all optimistic and bubbly about the Medina, whether he's saying a bracha on Hallel, not saying Hallel, whether he says Reish Megulatenu or not, the whole positive approach is simply wrong because it's against the majority of the Gedolim of Das Torah. So 2 important points. So who exactly are all the Gedolim of the last century? And did anyone do a proper research study in what the majority of Gedolim hold? I don't know. But to me, it doesn't make a difference. Because even if one would want to say that the majority of the Gedolim have been more negative or parv about the Medina, even if one would say that that's the case, as we've learned, that doesn't machriya. That doesn't machriya. Who does it force? It forces those people who follow those Gedolim they're going to follow their views, and they're going to take whatever approach that their posek says for them. That's fine. But to go ahead and say that every other posek of Tzvi the Cook, or Soloveitchik, or Aaron Lichtenstein, or Nachman Rabinovich, or Shlomo Aviner, these great Talmidei Chachamim, the list of course goes on and on and on. Now they're all just wrong. They're all just wrong because they didn't follow the majority of Gedolim. They were bound to follow the majority of Gedolim, and therefore their approach is just irrelevant. To me, it's chas v'shalom to say such a thing. Chas v'shalom. A person has every right and obligation to follow his rabbi, and his rabbi, if he's a Gadol, fine. If it's not a Gadol, it follows his Gadol, and that's how the Masorah works. And you can have different groups. And we have to learn to accept each other as different opinions. Each one has a right to believe that his opinion is correct, but to go ahead and dismiss the other opinion does not even exist, and it's just heresy and non-existent, to me, is a wrong approach. It's an interesting point to note regarding Israel, that if you look in the first generation with the Meraglim, majority of the Meraglim held which way? Not to go into Israel. And they were Gedolim, they were great people. So the majority of the Meraglim, who were great people, held not to go in, and they were wrong. In the second Commonwealth, Ezra, Nechemia came with 40,000 people who were not exactly the Gedolim, far from it, intermarried, didn't know what halacha was at all. And where the majority of Gedolim, where were they? They were in Bavel, not coming back. And they had all their reasons why not to come back, and did not have a positive orientation to what was going on in Israel during that time. So is it possible that for the third time, you have a majority of Gedolim who, let's say it's majority of Gadol, which I said, it's not Pasha that's true, but let's say that's true, who don't have a positive orientation. So it is possible that there's a minority of Gedolim, if that is a minority of Gedolim, that are much more bubbly and optimistic, and it could be that they ultimately, in the eyes of Hashem, are right. But we follow each Gadol, paskins what he sees fit, his people follow his psak and his leadership, and that's it, and Hashem ultimately decides who is right, who is wrong. But what's crucial is that we have the process of following our posek, following our Gedolim, and that's it. And there can be machlokas l'shem shamayim. And to go ahead and just knock out one side because it's not the Das Torah and they don't have a positive orientation to the Medina, to me is inappropriate. It just goes to machloket. And then Yetz Hashem, we'll have the Gula Shlem B'Meher V'Yameinu, and then the Emes, of course, we'll all look back in the Emes, and some of us will say, wow, that's exactly how I thought it was going to develop. And others are going to say, wow, I didn't think it was going to happen that way. Yetz Hashem, we'll see it develop very, very soon. B'Meher V'Yameinu, Shalom.